If you don't fix the protection issues and you don't fix how you handle pressure, it's going to come from off the plane. Jeff Hafley, the new defensive coordinator for Green Bay, he's going to blitz Jalen in this offense from the moment this game starts. You know this is a defensive guy. You guys would always go into games. If we struggled as offensive people, you'd sit there and go, prove to us you fixed it. That's what I'm going to pay attention to specifically. But make no bones about it. If it doesn't work out and they're not playing well, the quarterback has no blame other than he's got to play better.
All right, there is Dan Orlovsky as we get ready for Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash. Football at 4 is powered by the Inside the Birds podcast. It's brought to you by Bet365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. Andrew DiCecco is here. We're going to break down the matchups that he's looking at in this game tomorrow night. Gosh almighty, Andrew, it's nice to talk about a game and a matchup. What's up, my brother?
Hey, Mike, how you doing?
All is good, man. And, man, it's finally a game. We finally got it going here. But let's get into Jalen Hurts here. He just said no one to blame for himself this year. They've given him everything. Do you concur that this offense is now a complete roster? They gave him the coordinator. They got the line. They've got the weapons. That really there are no excuses for this offense this year.
Yeah, I think that's an accurate assessment. They've worked really hard in the offseason to acquire as many weapons as possible, including running back Saquon Barkley, to really balance out the offense, and it's going to allow Jalen Hurts the ability to lean on the running game and not have to take so many hits in the short yardage situations. Then, of course, you have the gamut of weapons, which now includes wide receiver Jahan Dotson. So I think Jalen Hurts, there's not a lot of excuses right now. The offensive line is set and in place, and now it's up to him to take the next step in his evolution as a quarterback.
All right, let's look at that offense, Andrew, and get your thoughts. You know, the Eagles' passing game, you got Brown, you got Dotson, you got Smith. Is that a strength in the game Friday night against this Packers secondary?
Yeah, I believe it is. But I also would temper that by saying it all depends on how much Jahan Dotson's able to help you in terms of what he knows of the offense right now. It's not an easy offense to learn. They didn't get here that long ago, so I'll be curious to see how the Eagles choose to play it, whether or not they elevate a wide receiver like a Paris Campbell to alleviate that, or if they realize if it's to the point where he knows enough of the offense to get them through the game. So we'll find that out. But AJ and Devontae, the best receiving duo in the NFL. I guess you could also say Chase and Higgins in Cincinnati are up there as well. But I think that Devontae and AJ give you the best balance, and they're going to be able to win most of the matchups that anyone puts in front of them. So I think you're in good shape there.
Talking with Andrew DiCecco, looking at the matchups he's looking at in the game on Friday night. Jalen Hurts, third among quarterbacks with 605 rushing yards last season. Green Bay tied for 29th in rushing yards allowed to opposing quarterbacks. Do you look at Jalen Hurts' legs Friday night as a big factor in the game?
I do, especially as you're trying to settle into the game, and I believe the Green Bay is going to look to test the protection up front with Cam Jurgens and Jalen Hurts, of course. They're going to, and the Eagles defense really did a lot of that during training camps. I think you're going to see Green Bay try to take an aggressive approach, and in doing so, Jalen Hurts is going to be able to find running lanes. If things aren't there, if he's not seeing things as quickly, it'll allow him to settle into the game. I also would expect some short plays to Saquon Barkley and Dallas Goedert as well.
All right, Andrew, let's go to Barkley. He obviously, $12.5 million. They brought him in here. Is this a night where you can feature him right off the bat against this Green Bay defense? Is that a spot where you say, hey, we spent $12.5 million, let's feature him on opening night? Should there be lanes to run against the Green Bay defense for Saquon Barkley?
Yeah, I certainly think they're going to try. That they're going to try and eat up as much clock as possible, keep the Green Bay offense off the field, and burn out some clock there with Saquon Barkley. But we'll have to see how that works, because it takes time for things to click sometimes. And I think you're going to see them implement that early on to try and settle the offense into the game. But sometimes that doesn't always work. So we'll have to see. But I think Saquon is going to be featured heavily. But I would actually think that he's going to have more of a factor in the receiving game. As Green Bay, I would expect to send a lot of pressure early to see what the Eagles are able to do in terms of blocking it up.
All right, let's flip to the defense with some news, some breaking news, by the way. Isaiah Rodgers has been ruled out for the game. I would imagine that means Quinyon Mitchell goes to the outside. How does this all affect the Eagles' defense? It looked like Rodgers was going to be the guy outside and Mitchell more in the slot. So how do they configure that defense now?
Yeah, I talked to Isaiah Rodgers earlier in the week, and he was really excited about this game, so it's a tough break for him. But Now you're going to see Quinyon Mitchell stay at nickel and Keely Ringo go in outside when the Eagles are in nickel. And then in base package, you're going to see Quinyon Mitchell and Darius Slay out there at corner. I think it actually, matchup-wise, Mike, it helps them a little bit because Keely Ringo's a little bit of a bigger-bodied corner, so he can help you with some of the receivers that the Green Bay Packers have, like Romeo Doubs, like Christian Watson, and to some of those type of players, the bigger-bodied guys that gave Isaiah Rodgers sometimes trouble in training camp, out-muscling him for the football. So it's something to keep an eye on. Keely Ringo did have a nice training camp. I asked Vic Fangio about him a few weeks ago, and he performed better in the games than he did at practice, but he's been a little bit grabby, so that's something to keep an eye on. But I think that body type-wise and skill set-wise, that kind of helps the Eagles.
Brett Rogers is out with a hand injury in the game, so he will not play for the Eagles. Of course, the other guy you didn't mention is Cooper DeJean. Do you anticipate him being active, inactive, or a part of this defensive game plan at all tomorrow night?
Before the Isaiah Rodgers ruling out, I would have said that Cooper DeJean's probably inactive, but now he's going to probably be active, but to what degree is he going to be able to help you? I'm not sure very much. He didn't play a ton, and when he did, he looked like a player that needed more reps and more time, and I don't know that you want to give him that time week one in a critical moment against a Green Bay Packers team that has 4 wide receivers and a tight end that can really threaten you there. He might be able to help you as a gunner or on special teams, but I think right at this juncture, someone like an Avonte Maddox, who's there at safety as well, could help you in the nickel role, could help you in dime packages, and you also have Eli Ricks there as well. So it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't have much of an. I expect him to be up for the game, but I wouldn't expect a significant role.
Yeah, all right. You got Avonte Maddox who could play some slot as well, possibly there. We'll see what the Eagles do with Isaiah Rodgers out. The other news yesterday came down. It's Devin White that is out. And, man, it seemed like when this came down, there was all sorts of, well, he really wasn't the guy anyway. Nakobe Dean's going to be the guy. How do you kind of read this whole White situation? He's out for this week, but is this Dean and Bond's job moving forward, even if White is back?
Well, Nick Sirianni today said, he reiterated that Devin White tweaked his ankle in practice, didn't make the trip, obviously, but I've said it countless times here. I've said it countless times elsewhere. Nakobe Dean has been the Eagles' best linebacker. He is the Eagles' best linebacker. He outperformed all the linebackers in training camp. If I had to rank them, it would be Nakobe Dean, Zach Bond, and then take your pick between Devin White and Jeremiah Trotter Jr. in terms of production for the length of training camp. I still envision it being Devin White and Nakobe Dean when the dust settles, but I expected Nakobe to be the weak side and Devin White be the middle linebacker, but it turns out that both players were kind of going for that same spot, and Nakobe unseated him at middle linebacker. So Zach Bond gives him a little bit more in terms of coverage and length. And I also think they like what they have in terms of their young linebackers. And when they signed Oren Burks to the active roster and they carry 6 inside linebackers, I thought that it was a sort of a statement that they wanted to go heavy there, and they like the experience, and they like the different skill sets that each player has. And so I would expect Oren Burks to have some opportunities as well.
All right, the matchups, let's look at that. You got Mitchell, Ringo, Slay. Is that the toughest matchup for the night, them against Love in this passing game? Or do you think the Eagles have a bigger problem with their linebackers up against Josh Jacobs, who's the new back in town in Green Bay?
Well, to take it a step further, I think their linebackers are going to have some trouble. And I am a little bit more optimistic than most are about the linebackers, having seen them from the spring through the summer. I think they're going to be, say, a significant upgrade over what you saw last season. But there's going to be areas that Green Bay is going to be able to exploit, particularly with the play action, right over the linebackers and between and in front of the safeties. I think they're going to be able to take a death by 1,000 cuts approach offensively, and I think they're going to put a lot of stress on the linebacker. So I think that would be more of the matchup to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I don't know. I want to get your opinion on this, Andrew, with Green Bay. Everybody seems to like them, based on their playoff run last year. They had the win. They gave a tough matchup there to San Francisco and really went toe-to-toe with them. But they were 9-8 last year, so this wasn't a team that had a great, consistent season. But is this a team now that you think is ready to take that next jump? Are they as dangerous as everybody thinks they are?
I think so, and I think a lot of it has to do with the team hitting their stride late in the season. You have something to build off of going through the offseason and carrying it through to the regular season. They have a lot more continuity than the Eagles do, so I think that counts for something. I think they are for real. I'm a big Jordan Love guy. I have been throughout the draft process when a lot of folks were pitting him up against Justin Herbert. I think that they're for real. So they're going to provide a lot of unique stresses, and it's a really tough task for a Eagles defense that has a lot of pieces and a lot of moving parts in their defense in transition.
Yeah, Jalen Carter, Jordan Davis, you got that duo there, Huff and Sweat on the outside. We'll see if they can get pressure to Love. Love has thrown 2 touchdowns or more in 4 straight games, no interceptions. He's been taking care of the ball really the second half of that season there. Do you look at the Eagles and pressure being something they can get against Green Bay?
Not initially, no. I think that's an area that I have a lot of questions about. You look at, they have the names and they have the numbers, but that's not what depth is, and that's not always something you can hang your hat on. I think there's a lot to prove there in terms of Bryce Huff. I think he can show that he can get to the quarterback in flashes, but you have to be able to see that consistency. He hasn't beaten tackles with relative consistency in training camp. He's flashed and then he's disappeared. Nolan Smith, he's a big question mark. Josh Sweat, to me, I think is the most certain piece that they have there in terms of pass rush. He's done it before. I think he's going to have double-digit sacks this year. So he's somebody that I think can get some pressure you can count on. Then they have the rookie Jalen Hunt, who I believe will be active for this game.
Wow.
But, again, he's a rookie. So, they have a lot of unknown variables there, a lot of athleticism, but a lot of unknown entities.
Chauncey Gardner-Johnson is back. He had 6 interceptions a couple years ago. He led the league. He missed a couple games and still led the league. How do you see his role similar or different with Vic Fangio than it was with John Gannon?
Well, I think that he's going to prove himself to be the Eagles' most impactful offseason addition in the sense that he can make plays on the back end, change momentum, take the football away, but he can also be moved around formations. And I think you're going to see Vic Fangio find ways to creatively deploy him, whether that be nickel, whether that be deep safety, whether he send him on blitzes. I think that he's going to be a versatile chess piece that they're going to look to exploit in a multitude of ways. And therefore, I think he's going to prove himself to be a versatile back-end piece that can take the football away and allow Reed Blankenship to take a more of a complementary backseat role, which is better suits his skill set.
Who has the big offensive game Friday night for you for Philadelphia? Who's the guy on Saturday morning we're saying, man, I can't believe what he did last night?
Devontae Smith, but it won't be a surprise for me. I picked him on my article for InsideTheBirds.com as my offensive player of the year for the Eagles, and I do believe that he's going to have a 1,300-yard season. He's going to thrive where teams look to shade coverage over A.J. Brown. I think the fact that Kellen Moore is likely to move him around, particularly out of the slot, is going to help accentuate what Devontae can do. He's a 3-level threat. He's really impressed me getting vertical and fighting through contact and in contested catch situations, so I think he's going to thrive.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 from the InsideTheBirds.com. And, of course, those guys got you covered all season long. We got you covered here on Football at 4. We'll get picks and everything from Adam tomorrow right here. It's the big one, and a lot of people talking about this one setting the tone, Andrew, in terms of what happened last year. If they come out and look like they haven't made that step, how big of an opening night? I mean, you don't want to say, hey, if you lose the game, your season's over. But if they lose the game and don't look good, is that a concern for you? Is this a tone setter for Philadelphia?
I don't know that it will be overly concerned. It depends on how they lose, but you have to take in all the other factors. There's the lack of continuity. There's 2 new coordinators. The offense hasn't gotten a lot of work together. I've always been of the belief that you have to have patience with the offense because there's the center quarterback exchange. There's a new wide receiver there. There's a quarterback who he's looked good in training camp, but you have to translate that onto the field. And in a game setting, that's a lot different. So I think for everything to be clicking and firing, and you're playing in Brazil no less, I wouldn't be surprised if they get off to a slower start, but I don't think that would be cause for concern. I just look at all the different elements surrounding the game, and I try to be really realistic with how I look at it. And I think that I don't expect it to be a high-scoring game, just given all the things surrounding the game. But I don't know that you can look at this game one way or the other as something that could determine the season or set the tone. I think that when you get them back on for Monday Night Football in Philadelphia, that's where you're really going to be able to measure where the team is at that point.
Well, it all goes down tomorrow night. Finally, after the offseason, training camp, preseason, and all of the prognostications, it's Eagles-Packers tomorrow night right here on 97.3 ESPN. So, Andrew, do they get off to a good start, or are we talking the next time you're on about an 0-1 team?
Well, I pride myself on consistency, and ever since the schedule came out, I've had this one as a loss. And I think even seeing it through spring and summer and everything, I still have it as a loss. So and I think they rebounded a big way on Monday night.
All right, so he doesn't like Philadelphia. He'll go Green Bay in this one, and we'll talk to him next week when the Eagles get ready to take on the Falcons on Monday Night Football. Another edition of Football at 4. All right, buddy, we'll talk to you next week, pal.
Thank you.
All right, Andrew DiCecco, Football at 4 here on the Sports Bash Live on 97.3 ESPN.